Conservation Commission. And I'd like to start by looking at our administrative discussions. I have some additions and we'll start in this order. Amy will start with updates to continued to a later date. We have to modify some notes on each one. We'll come to that. We're going to also add that we need to have a vote for the order of conditions for 04 Pond. We're going to have updates for 628 Newtown, update for the drawdown on Mattawanakee, and then an update for Cloverdale. Amy meets with the select board on Monday. So let's go ahead. Amy, I'm going to pass it over to you to go ahead. Of the agenda that was posted, we have an error, continued to a later date. So on your second page of your addenda, Amy's just going to update those for the public record.
Yep. So the notice of intent Healy Corner is continued to November 14th. And that actually is getting to be a real date, I think. The abbreviated NOI for 5 Caliva is continued to November 14th. The ANRAD for 95 Taylor, which had an 8:50 p.m. time, is incorrect. That's continued to November 14th. Ditto, the continued discussion of 20 Caliva, which had a 9 o'clock time, is continued to November 14th. And everything else is right.
So with town meeting around the corner, everyone to make note that November 14th is our next meeting. Okay, let's go ahead and start next with 04 Pond. We need to
actually, Sarah, can I pop in? I guess maybe depending on whether or not we issue anything tonight, we may need a meeting between now and the 14th.
I was going to say we could easily do that, especially if there's something that needs to be taken care of. The only reason it got pushed out because I think November 7th is election day, and sometimes I'm told to avoid that. Sometimes I'm told don't bother, so I skipped it.
My suggestion would be let's table that for right now, but we may need to revisit that before we close.
all right, let me put that on notes. Okay, so let's go ahead. As we know, 04 Pond has been closed. We need to have a vote for the order of conditions. If there is a motion to do so, those were circulated by Tim, I believe, a week or so ago. Anybody want to make a motion to approve the order of conditions?
Let me know if you want me to throw them up, because I think I can.
I make the motion to approve the order of conditions for 04 Pond.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Andrew?
Roll call vote. Chase.
Aye. Chase Gervig, aye.
Ed.
Ed Folks, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Carl.
Carl Melberg, aye.
Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
And Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
And myself, aye. It is unanimous.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next on administrative discussions, update on 628 Newtown. Amy?
Yeah, actually, Sarah, after I met you on Sundays, as I was driving home, I slammed on the brakes because they finally had a contractor out there close to done on getting the pervious pavers out there. And it looked like they've been doing a good job. The erosion control's up. They took out all sort of the debris that the other contractor just kind of tossed over the side. So I haven't seen it in the last couple of days, but I think they might finish up this week.
Okay, great, thank you. Drawdown of Lake Mattawanakee update?
Just that they are starting this week, I believe. So just to let you know.
Okay. And then you're meeting with the select board on Monday for review of grant for Cloverdale?
Yes, so I know you approved the application to Mass Wildlife for the Phragmites control at Cloverdale. So because that's over $20,000, I was just going to run it by the select board as well. And also let them know that the entire estimated cost is 33 something over 3 years. And that depending on the Mass Wildlife Grant, I would also be chasing CPC funding, the Light and Water Community Grant, small SISMA, and then our own budget to cover the rest of it.
Any questions for Amy? Okay, so now we're going to go back to the posted administrative discussions. Littleton Sewer Expansion Project Update 204-0959 on King Street.
On everything. So actually I
everything.
went out behind the library this morning, and there's a couple more things they need to clean up back there, but it's under control. And then 242 King, Tim and I went out there this afternoon and looked at it. It probably didn't look that much different than when you and I were out there, Sarah. They have expanded the basins, added flock logs in the treatment. They're changing the filters at least once a day, I believe it was. And they had cleaned out those basins as well. Oh, and they had the guys out there with shovels and rakes cleaning up the sediment that had gotten beyond the erosion controls. The volume of water hasn't changed. That's going out.
Two things, if you could follow up with them to ask them, we pushed them when Kyle, Chase, and I were out to do a water sampling for quality of that. And also viability of using temporary basin as you drive in on the right. And then Chase had mentioned, along with Kyle, that if things start to go pear-shaped, that we really do need to get another holding tank in there.
Yes. Yeah, I mentioned to them about the water sampling. They're going to double check that. I said what they might want to figure out is, because when you're seeing, a certain volume of the water in the basin, it looks kind of murky with very fines in it. But by the time you're just looking at the skim discharge, if you will, out towards the wetlands, it looks clear, because it's not that heavily. As I said, if they're going to figure out a way to sample both in the basin and what's coming out and going through the woods, because it's certainly deep enough. They're also going to stake where that spread of water was through the woods as of today, with a date on it. So at least we'll have a reference point about whether or not those things are getting bigger or smaller.
Okay. Chase and Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong, those were action items from last week that should have been done last week.
The staking was, I'd give them a little bit of leeway to get a turbidity meter out there, but that shouldn't take more than a day or two.
Yeah, I'm still curious about permitting for that. What their NIPTES permit is, and how that. I mean, they're discharging water, right? I don't care if it's not really on site anymore. So, my experience with NIPTES and treating water and then discharging water is that there's routine sampling, data sampling, not just turbidity sampling. So I'd be curious to see if that's something that they're supposed to be performing.
Would you be willing to look at that setup for that report if Amy sends it over to you?
Yeah, if we can get a copy of that NIPTES permit, I'll gladly take a look at it.
We have the SWIP
Right.
application. I'm pretty sure I've got that whole thing. Let me double check what I have. That'd be great, because I'm never quite sure.
Yeah, they would be they're two very separate things. And they definitely kind of just nodded their head and moved along when I mentioned NIPTES. So, I mean, I'm not sure that they really anticipated having to treat and discharge water, but the fact is they are now. So,
yeah,
if we can't get it done through us, then we can certainly push it to Mass DEP. They'll get it done.
Right. Yeah, I feel as though that needs to come to a high priority list. Okay.
Yeah.
And with that, Amy, can you, to the extent that there is sampling requirements as part of their NIPTES permit, could you ask them to transmit the sampling data to us to take a look at?
Yes, I said that they should include the results of those in the week in the reports when they get
In
them.
the weeklies. Okay.
Yeah.
They did tell me when I was out there that their inspections were only once every 2 weeks. So,
but we changed that it has to be after any rain event.
Well, and that's what I wanted to mention
So
to make sure
if
that
it
that's
rained
on your.
yesterday, we should have a report today. If it rains today, we should have a report tomorrow. We were very clear with that on site.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I'll double check that because I will admit, I know I've been getting reports from them, but I haven't been tracking how frequently we've been getting them.
Sure. So we've left it that any rain event, it doesn't matter if it sprinkles. Okay, Webster land update?
Hey, Sarah?
Sure.
Did I read in one of your reports, Chase's report of yours, a lot of that runoff was coming off the 495 embankment? Or,
So someone else can probably speak a little bit more eloquently to me, but the pipe, there's a discharge coming off. It's 35 inches. And then they found a pipe that they didn't know about that we knew about, wasn't planned in calculations. They're also getting backflow. They're dewatering and some of it's coming back in as well. There's definitely some challenges. There's a tremendous amount of ledge there that they're having to blast through veins of water over there as well. So
Yeah, Carl, though, my understanding is part of the complication here is that the Phragmites area in the, I guess it's like the northwestern part of the site, is receiving more runoff than they had anticipated. I think we would argue that they should have anticipated it, but in any case, more than they anticipated. And there's no way to discharge that water currently except through the treatment basins on the southeast.
so that's what caught my attention, Chase, was that should have all been, they should have definitely known that.
Yeah, we were pretty adamant at that point on our site walk.
Not cool. Yeah, I caught that from the report. I really appreciate you guys. Your reports were wonderful. Thank you.
okay. Webster land update?
Yeah, quick update on where we stand. So one of our issues with it was the purchase and sale agreement had some Scrivener's errors in it. Those are minor and not that big of a deal, but needed to be taken care of. And the other element was that the purchase and sale agreement had a due diligence period. We've received, this will be news to you, Amy. We received a red line version of the purchase and sale agreement this afternoon that addresses both the Scrivener's errors and removes the due diligence period. I spoke with Gary Wilson this afternoon, chair of the select board, to ask him if we could engage town council to get town council's opinion on whether or not that, particularly the removal of the due diligence period, is essentially makes this a bona fide offer under what was it, chapter 61, where are we in 61A here, something like that.
I think it's A, I forget which one.
It doesn't matter really in this case, but so looks like we've got a clean offer and the trajectory appears positive at the moment in terms of getting things buttoned up for town meeting. One question for the select board. This is an article that was put forward by the Conservation Commission. We need someone to speak. I would certainly like to speak, but I'd also like to give anyone else the opportunity if you'd prefer to introduce the article. I'm happy to do it if no one else wants to take it on.
So with this right around the corner, does anyone else wish to speak or help Chase with that?
Chase,
Go ahead, Andrew.
I was just going to say, Chase, you do a fantastic job representing us. If you did need assistance, I think we would jump to it. But I mean, even at the select board, you were amazing. And I think that you'd be a very good representative for us at town meeting.
Because my head's not big enough already. Thanks, Andrew.
All right, thank you for that. Lakeshore compliance guidance discussion.
Table?
Before we move off Webster Lane, Lando, any comment on George Sanders' letter? It seemed to me that kind of represented where we were at, the struggle we experienced throughout the whole deliberation, but
I think my thought on that I don't know that we have time to draft a response to that. I think if there is a commissioner that wishes to, speak to him privately as a Littleton citizen. I think that's appropriate as well, but I don't think that we as a commission have the time to respond.
I'm not sure I was suggesting a response. The gentleman took the time to write the letter. I thought we at least owed him the courtesy of acknowledging it and, giving our thoughts about how we felt about what he said. But I understand where you're
Yeah, I very much appreciated his time and effort, and I think he speaks to a lot of concerned townspeople here as taxpayers, for sure. I was pleased to receive it.
That does wrap around though to the way that I intend to put this forward to town meeting is very straight down the middle. I am not of the mind that we as the Concom should do a sales job here, right? We're going to lay out the conservation argument for this, but I don't think we can or should hide from the financial challenges.
I agree. But we want to make sure though that we are clear about the conservation aspect and the things that came up at the selectmen's meeting regarding the artifacts and the animals and, that are recorded, the bear and deer and so forth. So everybody is understanding about that.
The artifacts piece, I should have touched on this and I didn't. I apologize. I asked Linda Stein in the Historical Commission. Hopefully, Andrew, you've heard from her to take a look at the historical and cultural significance components of this. I'm a little bit hesitant to say much about that until I have, I think, someone else's more learned opinion on the significance of those.
Sure.
So the Historical Commission, I believe, will have this on its agenda for the 24th. Yeah, we should be making a determination then.
Very good.
If the commission's comfortable.
Okay, great. We've got to keep going. I know everyone is anxious to have a Nagog Orchard update. We've not met in a very long time. There's been some change of leadership. We met once last week, and we're trying to come up with dates that the committee can all continue to meet. We would like to start to meet on Wednesdays, although we have conflict next week. Many of us have been tasked to kind of seek additional information. Amy was gracious enough to go for a drive around with me today to talk about invasives. I met with a former orchardist out there as well. We're just trying not to reinvent the wheel and hopefully have some new leadership listen to this committee that's going on year 3. So it's been very frustrating, and hopefully in the coming weeks and months, I'll have a more definitive update for everyone. Tree protection policy.
Yeah, it's the same. We have to push that down. I'm still working on it, but it's not. I mean, I don't have anything substantial to share with you yet.
Okay, thank you. So let's go ahead and start with 745 public hearing notice of intent. Foster Street reconstruction does not have a DEP number. Is there anyone here to speak to this?
It actually does. It's 991.
Okay, please make note. 0991 added to the notes. Anyone here to speak to Foster Street?
Yes,
Yeah,
good
hi.
evening. Go ahead, Nick.
We got Aaron Keegan from Fuss and O'Neill and Nick Lapointe from Fuss and O'Neill representing the town of Littleton.
Okay, great. Thank you. It's all yours.
Okay, thanks. I'll just share my screen. Hey, good evening, commissioners. We had appeared before the board in June with an RDA. We've since revised our permitting to an NOI. However, there has not been any changes to the project design since that time. And so I'm just going to briefly run through about 10 slides just to kind of refresh everyone's memory about the project, and then we'll open it up to questions and comments. The project is reconstruction of Foster Street. The project includes about 0.75 mile length of Foster Street, about 200 feet of Taylor Street, and that is at the intersection of Foster Street and Taylor Street. Project also includes about 145 feet of Grimes Lane at the intersection of Foster Street. Total project work area is 5.37 acres. Purpose and need of the project is to improve safety for all travel modes on Foster Street. The town is taking the opportunity, since the road will be fully reconstructed, to replace the 10-inch water main underneath Foster Street, to take advantage of the excavation and not have to dig a second time. Another kind of specific area of the project is the Grimes Lane intersection. Part of the purpose and need there has to do with safety at the railroad crossing. The existing alignment of Grimes Lane does not meet standards as it approaches Foster Street. It's also more narrow than we would typically design for two-way traffic, and the project will make the configuration of the railroad gate, the safety gate there, up to date in terms of safety standards. Currently, it's not to standard. And this shows a little bit about the shared use path. So a big feature of the project is a 10-foot shared use path on the north side of Foster Street to provide bike accommodations and also for pedestrians. This is a graphic that shows the preferred alternative. This alternative was chosen over another alternative that would have put the bike lanes on the street itself with the sidewalk. The chosen alternative with the shared use path ends up being about a foot less of pavement area. And so that was part of why it was chosen as the preferred alternative. Okay, and that just shows the realignment of Grimes Lane as it will be reconnected to Foster Street, pulling it away from the railroad tracks, and we'll talk about the impacts there. This does actually encroach into the 50-foot no disturb area, and I can show you that in more detail on the actual plans themselves. The work on Taylor Street is not widening. It's really limited to restriping and adding new signage for bike lanes within the limited project limits on Taylor Street, and some new pedestrian crossings with fully compliant curb ramps. Stormwater, the project will will improve 9 existing catch basins by replacing them with deep sump catch basins. 7 of the existing catch basins will be retained but remodeled and repaired. There'll be 4 new leaching impervious catch basins on Foster Street. Those will be in the area on Foster Street surrounding the railroad crossing. There'll be 3 brand new deep sump catch basins, so those would be in areas where there currently is not one. So those are some of the proposed stormwater improvements. It is a limited project because we are widening less than 1 lane. It's also a redevelopment project. So the project meets the stormwater standards to the maximum extent practicable. There is a riprap swale on the frontage of the MBHCA property that will be shifting about 5 feet to accommodate the shared use path. We'll be rebuilding it to the same specs or to the same dimensions that it is currently. In terms of the impacts, there's no proposed direct impacts to Bank, BVW, and then a water riverfront area or BLSF. There are proposed impacts to the buffer zone, 100-foot buffer zone. The proposed permanent impacts would be totaling just over 15,700 square feet, or that's about 0.36 acres of new permanent impact buffer zone. The temporary impacts to 100-foot buffer zone totals about 35,000 square feet. That's about 0.81 acres. And of course, the proposed permanent buffer impacts result from the shared use path surface. The temporary impacts to buffer zone result from earthwork or regrading that will eventually be revegetated with loam and seed. And as I mentioned, the project is eligible as a limited project, and I think I already said that. So the next part is the 50-foot no disturb zone. We are proposing, a lot of this happens at Grimes Lane, where we're shifting the alignment of the road. The net change in impervious in the 50-foot no disturb zone is just over 7,000, basically 7,500 square feet. It's about 0.17 acres. The temporary impacts 14,355 square feet. That's 0.33 acres. And similar to the impacts of the buffer zone, permanent is resulting from a paved surface. Temporary is where there will be disturbance, but then it will be revegetated with loam seed. Yeah, the project is seeking a waiver to the disturbance to the 50-foot no disturb area. The grounds for that request are that the impact to the 50-foot no disturb is a fairly small percentage of the project area. It's a long linear road project, and we were not able to avoid the 50-foot no disturb area by choosing another alignment. The quality of the resources being impacted are not high quality resource areas. They are existing vegetation, existing no disturb and buffer zone areas that have been adjacent to Foster Street for some time and receiving sheet flow runoff from the road surface. That said, of course, they still need to be protected. The preferred alternative, as I mentioned, is 1 foot less of pavement compared to the next leading alternative that was not selected. The sedimentation erosion controls measures will be implemented during construction and enforced through this project. It will be monitored by a full-time Mass Department of Transportation resident engineer who's responsible for holding the contractor to the project specifications and any conditions. The one mitigating factor is that the shared use path has the potential to reduce vehicular trips by connecting a residential neighborhood to the commuter rail station on Foster Street. And that's the end of my presentation, and I'll turn it over for comments, unless Nick, did you want to weigh in on anything before we do questions and comments?
I don't think so, Aaron. Nice job. I guess one thing is just to build in that MassDOT comment you made again. Yeah, this is a MassDOT project, so they will have that resident engineer out there. There will be a SWIP. There will be an NPDES permit. There will be, stormwater reports that they'll have to, the contractor will be required to provide the town. So there is a high level of construction oversight and adherence to any order of conditions that would be placed in this project to give commissioners that peace of mind. So this isn't typical, private development. The state will be on site every single day, so commissioners can have access to that resident engineer at any time.
And Nick, I asked you this before, but we actually have some new commissioners. Can you also describe the state's involvement in terms of peer review up until this point or prior to construction?
Oh yeah, good point. Chase, thanks. Yeah, so basically at every design stage, we are required to submit our plans to Mass DOT, to their stormwater management unit, and their highway design unit for, basically they do a full red line of the plan set, and we have to meet their standards. So this NOI was run through their stormwater management section in their environmental resources unit. So it has been fully QA/QC'd. So this is basically a project that Mass DOT's environmental section has approved, and that's how we got to this point where we're in front of you today. So there has been a good level, like I said, of QA/QC on this, and it meets all Mass DOT's environmental standards and regulations within the state highway layout of Route 2, and specifically all of the erosion and stormwater management best practices that Mass DOT requires in all of their projects.
How wide is the walking, biking path? How wide is that?
It should be 10 feet, right, Aaron? We have the whole way, and it varies potentially at 12 feet at some of the crossings. But yeah, it's a full multimodal facility that also meets Mass DOT minimums.
That 10 feet is the car
Paved
portion and
surface.
the walking portion?
Yeah, the 10 feet
I
is
was asking
only
for
for
the-
bicycles.
The bicycle walking portion, how wide is that?
Yep, 10 feet.
Oh, well then you're encroaching on the 50, but you've got 10 feet there. Why can't you take a little bit less there and stay out of the 50?
The mass, so this project is required by Mass DOT to have a minimum, to meet the healthy transportation criteria. We either have to provide 5-foot on-street bicycle lanes with sidewalks on both sides, which as Aaron mentioned, would be a much wider impact, or the smallest footprint would be having a 10-foot wide shared use path, which accommodates both bicycles and pedestrians on one 10-foot off-road facility. We basically can't go any less than that, or there wouldn't be a project. It wouldn't exist.
And to confirm for the commission, that path is on the train side, not on the wetland side, correct?
I mean, the wetlands are basically, scattered.
In terms of Grimes, so as you're coming up.
Oh, in terms of
Foster,
Grimes.
if you come out of Grimes and you take a right, the path would be on your left.
Exactly. Yeah, the path is on the MBTA station side, throughout the entire length of Foster Street. It's on the north side, on the opposite side of Grimes. Exactly.
Okay, so I have quite a few questions. Other commissioners want to go first?
The other question I had was you're increasing the impervious, basically paved, which means more salt and other stuff in the winter. That's
I mean, actually, the roadway pavement is being reduced. So in terms of the salt, there'll actually be less than there is today. Where we're increasing, the increase in impervious is due to the shared use path, which won't be salted. It'll just be plowed.
Okay.
So in terms of the additional land, is that considered a taking of that land when you're putting that path in, or the additional areas? Or who owns that land that we've now kind of left our traditional road and moved on? How is that?
The shared use path is being constructed almost entirely, or this project is almost entirely within the public layout. So the town owned the land before there was a wide layout. There are minor permanent easements that are being acquired for placement of utility poles and kind of other utility infrastructure, but by and large,
and have those been finalized? Those easements?
Those I believe appraisals have been done, and I believe all the property owners have been notified, and I believe DPW is in the process of negotiating with those owners.
Okay.
And
So
I would add there,
might-
Sarah, the select board has appropriated the money to pay for those acquisitions.
Right. Okay, great. I think you might recall that we expressed an interest for a site walk the last time you all met with us. So going forward, we just want to be clear that, Grimes especially is a sensitive area to us. And you had mentioned in terms of your flow coming into Grimes and into that wet area that you recognize your sheet flow. Have you evaluated all the water that's coming down from Durkee now that development has been established?
We didn't do any sort of area-wide or watershed modeling outside of the roadway network itself of what Foster Street's handling. We don't typically look at other developments for systems that we're basically maintaining existing. But we are aware that there is a significant amount of water kind of coming down Grimes into that area, and it has been somewhat problematic and wet. That's why we're adding some new leaching structures there to try to mitigate any sort of additional flow that would be caused by this project, and hopefully help solve some of the ponding that happens at the railroad tracks. But in terms of any sort of like watershed analysis of the Durkee farm area, we have not done that.
Okay, so I'm curious. So last year we had a dry year, and then this year we had a wet year. What year did you base your flows on? Was it a year ago? Was it recently? Because those of us that have lived through Durkee and that development, there's a tremendous amount of water. And I just want to make sure that we're appreciative of that kind of flow and that spread there. So when we obviously are out on site, that will be something that we'd like to kind of address with you for sure. But I'm curious when you did your analysis of your sheet flow from the road.
Yeah, again, we didn't do typically when we do road project, and again, I have to check with our engineers and maybe Eric and Pine. We don't, on redevelopment projects, we don't typically analyze the entire network for, especially if we're basically maintaining a reasonable amount of impervious or not increasing impervious significantly. This is basically, you know, we're keeping existing drainage structures where they are. We're adding some new. So we didn't necessarily do a typical, like, what, you know, when you're putting it in a brand new parking lot, you're building a parking lot, you do a stormwater report. We don't do that for linear roadway systems unless we're doing significant or major widening on these projects. So you won't find, I don't believe, Aaron, right, with our NOI, any sort of formalized stormwater report. I mean, that's not, Mass DOT doesn't require that for their stormwater management unit.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I just want to bring that
Sure.
point of interest because you did recognize that
Yep.
Grimes does have issues.
And that doesn't mean, I'm not saying we don't design for it internally, like when we look at, you know, where there's ponding and flooding and if there's storm events, and it doesn't mean we don't look at those things, but we don't formally prepare a report.
Okay. And my last question is, can you outline where the 4 new basins are, please?
Sure.
Your catch basins?
Yes, so on the screen, I believe we can see the 4 new leach and catch basins are proposed to be, I believe this is one right here. There's another one that is over here. There's 2. There's a third. I believe there's a new leaching catch. Here's another. This is actually, yep, a little to the west of the railroad tracks here, station 22.5.
Yeah, it's underneath the Route 2. Like, a lot of water comes, Route 2 is kind of the low point, the sag underneath the highway. So we've been trying to intercept a lot of that water before it gets to the railroad tracks.
Right. The 4th one, I believe, is not, might be covered actually under the, I might have shaded over it, but it's also kind of somewhere in the, you know, between the entrance of the MBTA driveway and the Route 2 bridge. We placed it in that kind of area because, as Nick mentioned, that's one of the lowest areas of the project.
Okay. So when we do a site walk, if on the pavement, those can be noted in those areas for those 4, that would be great.
Okay.
Commissioners, questions?
Yeah, related question to yours, Sarah. The catch basins at the Grimes Lane intersection, are there any catch basins that will discharge to the, I guess, eastern portion of that intersection into that wetland there?
There won't be any new catch basins that do that. We chose the leaching catch basins because there are unfortunately no outlets here. And so we certainly can't create a new outlet. There is an existing catch basin that outlets to this wetland area in front of Durkee Farm Builders. And that happens kind of between let me see if I could find it. It's between the 2 MBTA driveways.
Yeah, there's an outlet.
Yeah, so the easternmost MBTA parking lot driveway has an existing catch basin that goes underneath Foster Street and outlets into that existing wetland.
And have you looked at that outlet?
Early on in the project, when we started, I want to say about 2018, we did go through and look at all of them. We have not looked at it recently.
Okay. On the site walk, can we look at that?
Okay.
Is this a candidate for green for a peer review, commissioners, or?
You know, if it was a private project at the scope that this is, I would very much support that. But given that the state's looking at it,
Okay.
I'm not sure green's going to add anything.
That was
Okay.
my thought too, Chase. I completely agree.
Thank you. Do we want to set up a time for a site walk? Or day? When can you have things staked and marked for us?
Well, we could certainly we could aim for the week after next, I would say, at the earliest.
Yeah, I mean, we probably would just go out ahead of time the day of the site walk and stake them out that same day. So kind of at your convenience.
Okay, so we'd be looking at the week of November 1st. So October 30th, November 1st. Town meeting is on the 1st. Anybody have thoughts? Halloween is the day before. Anybody want to throw out a date?
Yeah, let's do Thursday, November 2nd.
Okay, with limiting starting of daylight, what time do we want to meet?
Oh yeah, is that before or after daylight savings time? I could.
Still just losing more and more, so.
Hmm.
That's
What
right
time?
before daylight savings times
Okay.
ends. So sunset should be what, 6 o'clock?
We want to throw out a time?
5:30. I'm just dictating this until somebody else decides to jump in.
No one's chimed in, so.
I won't be able to make it, but that's probably fine.
Andrew,
And I'm still limited on sidewalks. So the doctor says otherwise.
So I should be able to make the 2nd at 5:30.
Looks like I was off by a few minutes. Sun sets on
that's what I was
November
just
2nd
looking at to see what time.
5:38. Yeah, we should do it a little bit earlier than that, especially because we're going to be along the road.
Andrew, what time do you think you could push it a little, and Kyle and Carl?
Let's see. I could probably be there at like 5:12, the earliest, if I fly up Route 2.
Right.
You could,
Let's say 5:10. Michael, Kyle, Carl.
no,
Yeah,
good.
the earlier the better, but I should be able to make it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
So-
good for me.
Yeah, I agree with the light. I'd like to try and see if we can kind of start to be there at 5.
Yeah.
Just it's a busy road.
Yep.
I'd like to, and then just have everybody wear reflective gear. So,
Be aware too, 5 o'clock is going to be commuter traffic.
yep. It will be. Okay, so November 2nd, 5 o'clock. We would like to have the basins marked, outlet marked, and we'll go from there.
I'm assuming the wetlands are still flagged. Is that right?
That's a good question, Chase. I'm not sure, but we can double check that. I think, Sarah, you mentioned too, you wanted to see the proposed edge of road for Grimes Lane staked out, as that's kind of the largest shift or change to the area. Is that something you still would like to see?
I think so, but we're taking the assumption that the wetlands are flagged. If the wetlands.
Yeah, no, that's correct. I just still wasn't sure if you wanted to see it in proximity, even the shift to the wetlands.
I think if you can do that, I don't want that to hold this up. But I think if you can do that for sure, but yes, please do make sure that the flags are still, if they need refreshing or not.
Sure.
And then for that day, if you can bring some plans, larger scale, that would be great for that wetlands area.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll print out a big plan set and have that so we can all look at it together. And if anyone doesn't have a safety vest, we'd be happy to provide those. So just let us know so that someone can Amy can let us know.
Yeah,
Last
Nick,
one.
I just assume and bring a couple with you.
Sure.
Where do we want to meet?
Seems like the commuter rail lots.
Yeah, the safest place is at the sidewalk, the commuter rail, right there where, where the bike racks are.
Okay. So we will see you then, and our next meeting is November the 14th as of this moment. So, okay. We will see you on November 2nd. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, it's 8:15, and we're going to go ahead and do the 8 o'clock public meeting for request of determination of applicability, 1 Sanders Point, which is removal of hazard trees. So Michael, Andrew, and I went out a week or so ago, and Amy had gone out previously to meet with the owners. and I think they are with us, perhaps.
I was trying to promote and a panelist, but that hasn't worked. Whoops.
Talking permitted has been muted. What does that mean?
Okay, I unmuted it.
Oh, here
Okay.
you come.
Join it, stay as an attendee.
Okay.
We're new to this.
No, that's okay. We're glad you're here, and
Can you see us? You can hear
No.
us?
we can hear
We
you.
can hear you.
Oh,
Yeah. Amy, do you have pictures?
who needs to talk?
We're waiting to see if Amy can put some of the photographs up. While we're doing that, if you would like to, for the commissioners that have not been out on site, just kind of go through what happened with the storm. And Amy has now put that up. We just kind of go through tree removal.
Yeah, we got a nice aerial one there for you. So the story is, we had a storm come through. Got a good burst of wind. Trees came down on our car, totaled the car, called the tree people out, the arborist. And what he did was said, okay, we have to go through through you folks. And then when we were talking about it, he said something to the effect of that batch of trees. And I said, what? And he said, those are unsafe. He says, the same thing could happen to those. He said, because of the height, the age, and the soil, that they would be unsafe, that they could cause a problem to the house, the car, just like what's happened. We've had 2 cars totaled so far. So that's when Amy came out and said, yeah, the ones that are down take care of this, but this other group of 7, we go through the normal channels with you folks and have a discussion. So the arborist put a letter together. I think 2 arborists signed it. That said that they were unsafe, and you have that, and here we are. So it's kind of in your hands now. Now, what Ann did is she labeled each tree 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and made a note of what we have found on those trees. Like number 1, there was really nothing. Number 2 had some rot, quite a bit of rot. Yeah, one of them is basically dying. You've seen that one, and so on. Okay, so
Amy, do you happen to have the photo of when you're up on the blacktop looking at the trees that were damaged?
I do not. Of the trees that actually fell, I don't have a picture of those handy.
There. You can't see us, huh? You have a picture of the trees that came down and landed on the car. I left them with you.
But not
The only thing that we have currently is the water view looking up the hill.
In the package that I have dropped off, it's there.
So for the commissioners, Andrew or Michael, do you want to review what you saw that day? And then we can kind of carry this on from there.
Sure, Sarah. So essentially on site, we did have those trees that had been damaged by the storm that I think we were fairly comfortable with removing. But then there was the large stand of pines over by the house that the arborist had deemed to be unsafe going forward. So those we were really kind of looking into that aspect of the request. But the other trees that had already fallen or were in really horrible shape, I think that we were fairly comfortable with removing. But yeah, the other stand was our main holdup, I would say.
So I'm just looking back, and I didn't, because it's on my phone, I didn't have a chance to upload it. There are 3 of the pines, and there's one that is definitely dead. Loss of needles, willowy up at the top. So at this point, I feel comfortable, and Michael, you were there as well. The trees that were noted as you first drive up on the right that were either down, damaged, or leaning significantly, I don't have a problem with cutting them off, leaving the stumps intact. And then as you go further down, there's the tree that is, that you can see that is in distress and also can come down as well.
Ah, there it is.
Yep.
Hmm.
So that tree has already been kind of cut. And that tree was further on the right a little bit. So I
Yeah,
think
it's definitely clear that there were, at least the one was on its way out and was going to be problematic at some point. So.
right. So commissioners, I would feel supportive of removing all the trees that were initially damaged and are leaning as you first approach up on the right. And then there's another tree probably 30 feet further down that is diseased or dead or gone past its time in a grove that I would remove. I think the commission has taken a very different stance on what is a hazard tree, what isn't, because some of those trees obviously have been there a long time and they still have life in them. So I don't feel comfortable initiating removal of the other trees at this time.
I guess that's sort of where I stand, taking this feedback or this sort of input from those that have seen it, that a tree that could fall and harm a structure is not itself a hazardous tree, right? It's got to be damaged, it's got to be diseased, it's got to be some sort of imminent risk associated with it. Not inclined to start just denuding lakefront areas of trees because they could at some point fall.
If you can go back to the list where Ann listed the tree number 1, tree number 2, tree number 3 with what we find. I think what the arborist said, his main concern, no, not that one.
Yes.
Okay, here it is. So the arborist's main concern was the height and the soil, not so much the integrity of the tree itself. So that's just an FYI. What we did is we took some pictures and we looked at it. So we said, tree number 1, that looked, I didn't see any problems with that tree. Tree number 2
It's split at the
is
base.
split at the base.
See, we have some pictures of that. It's split at the base and you can see that it's kind of rotted right at that base. So
Yeah,
it's also next to the one
that's dying. Tree number 4 is very similar to the trees that fell. There's no root structure because it's right on the water, basically. So there's no roots on that side. So what he was saying is if you get that good gust of wind, at some point it's going to come down. So anyways, this is just, some more information for you. Whatever you decide, it is. So,
And then
yes.
there's just my notes basically looking at really closely at the trees. And the number 6 it just had like it looks like it has a root problem because it looks like it was lifted. Again, to understand what this looks like is this little grove of trees is on an extremely steep bank. So the water side, the roots are somewhat compromised. They're good and strong on the uphill side.
Yeah, and just to be clear with what our stance is all we're concerned with really is just the safety. They could stand there for, like you say, they could stand other than the damaged ones, right? I think there's 3 that we pointed out that are damaged, but the other ones could be there you know, for a year, they could be there for 20 years, you know?
Or come down tomorrow. That's the way they are.
That's, you know, we've lived in the woods all our lives, so we know how it works.
From my perspective, the damaged ones there, no brainer, but I also look at it from a safety standpoint. If one or two of these trees are the same as the ones that recently came down, and the arborist is saying they have the same risk, I agree we don't want to denude the waterfront, but I also don't want to make them have to have their house destroyed in order to then agree to get the tree down. So I'm kind of balancing safety against the tree itself too.
And that's our number one thing. If for you, those of you who have seen our property, we spend, you know, 20 to 30 hours a week. We have, you know, what I consider the most beautiful property in Massachusetts.
It's a hobby.
It's a hobby. So we're planting plants, we're planting things, and you've seen it. It's absolutely incredible. So, you know, the trees would be very, very sad for all of us, and us. There's shade trees, but they would be replaced with wildflowers and PJMs and things like that. So it would be, you know, there's a balance there. It's, you know, and again, what you know, you're the arborist is the expert. You guys know a lot more than me, or us, but you know, just I do worry because that's our bedroom on that side, and where we've lost 2 cars already. It is scary when it's winter.
It's our major walkthrough. That's kind of, you know, the driveway's big, but that's our major place. That's where the cars go. That's where we go.
Commissioners, your thoughts?
I think part of the problem here is we need to be consistent. As you know, we had the other, was it a spec pond, a Mattawanaki, the other tree issue. And we held that landowner to a fairly high standard. I think we need to just be consistent in how we make our decisions. And Andrew and I, Tim and I, met another landowner down at Long Pond with wanted to take trees down. So it's like this is like the 3rd time in a month or so that landowners have approached us to remove trees along pond sides. So I just do think we need to be consistent how we make these decisions.
So as I stated, I feel comfortable with all the trees that are damaged and that other pine tree that is on its way out to remove that. My only concern is that sometimes when you remove one in a grove of 3, you're breaking down the integrity of that kind of like little classroom. You know, the landowners have agreed to look at additional plantings. The bank is very steep. It could use more stabilization for sure. It is vegetated. Those pine trees, based on how their proximity to the lake, do not offer shade. So there's not the temperature control factor that usually concerns me a lot for that habitat. I'm also happy to leave this open, let them say, go ahead and do all the work that we permit now. And if they want to look at some of those other trees in the future and try and come up with, working with Amy and others to come up with, how can we replicate for those trees that are there? I would consider that as well.
Yeah, one of the things that, like I said, we're going to be doing the planning, so we'll probably be putting in the cinnamon birch up at the
Well,
top.
actually, that's a question I had for you guys, is if you took a grove of trees like that down, what sort of thing would you replace them with? Again, it's not to provide shade, but it's because the bank is so steep and we don't want erosion. So is there particular kinds of trees or shrubs?
And-
So I have a quick question before we go into that. I thought my understanding was stumps are staying in place, right?
The stumps are definitely staying in place.
Okay, so we really shouldn't, I'm okay with further stabilization of the bank, but we shouldn't be worried about adding.
I think
issues, right?
they're looking to add tree cover on that. I think that bank could do well with some other trees, obviously not ones that grow that tall. So I think we're getting away from the original request here is for tree removal. So what are the commissioners' thoughts with the request? Just because we still have a full palette to go through tonight.
You
One
want
thing I could do, if you're amenable, is I could approve the removal of the already fallen trees as sort of an administrative thing and leave this RDA open. I don't know if you would want, another peer review arborist like you did over on Mattawanakee, to take a closer look at these 7 trees.
Well, I think you have quite a few that can come down. The ones that are already down, you also have the 2 or 3 that are leaning that have to come down. I don't know if those are hemlocks or what those are, but then also that other pine. But I recognize the ones that are down and damaged don't need a crane. But if you're going to go ahead and do other work for the one that is dying right now, you would need to bring in a crane. And I know you don't want to bring a crane in twice.
They've told us they need to bring in a crane to clear the ones that are leaning. And one good thing about that is there's a healthy fir tree that they therefore won't damage for sure. There's another kind of a nut tree that's being leaned into, and all of those trees will be able to be preserved.
Yeah, if you remember looking at it, one tree is all the way down, right? The one that hit Ann's car.
Yeah.
But the other one is like a 45-degree, even more now,
Yeah.
angle. So
It
the
moved.
only way that they would want to take it down is safety with a crane.
Yeah, because one's hung up actually.
Okay.
So
All right,
there's a crane
Commissioner,
coming out.
All right. So commissioners, what would you like to do? We need to move along.
I would say take the damaged ones down anyway. How many are we talking that are questionable? That we're thinking should stay up?
Yeah, that's where I'm still unclear on. You've kind of said that there's trees out there, but from that plan of 7, do you have the number of ones that you're comfortable with? I wasn't able to make that sidewalk, so
Yeah,
it sounds like there's.
And I think that pictures can really help. That I think I would come back to the owners and say, okay, you need to submit either through this mechanism, through Zoom, or to Amy and she can upload them for you. But I think commissioners have to be able to look at kind of more that holistic, bigger picture to see those trees. Because I don't know that others are going to have an opportunity to get out on site. So I would say you can go ahead and remove the ones that are damaged now, continue it to the next hearing, which is on the 14th, take photographs, and really kind of, we like to isolate each tree. So this is one, and to kind of go through and have supporting photographs for that. That's one avenue.
Yeah, we can't do it in groups of 2, like you mentioned. We gotta do it all, whatever you decide is what we do. We don't want to do 2 steps.
Yeah,
So
no, that makes sense. If you're talking mobilizing a crane, wouldn't expect you to have to try to do that in 4 different mobilizations.
it's
Correct. And
$2,000.
I think what you might be hearing is that you have some commissioners that may show leniency if you're diligent and come to the next meeting with more photographs so that they can see, because what's been submitted tonight is sparse.
Then be a little clearer on what is it specifically you would like to see in a photograph? Because we're talking 100-foot white pines. And a steep bank that's sort of difficult to get the feel for without, actually seeing it. And we are happy to have anybody come in and see them again, because we're retired, we're here.
Yeah, I thought I do have pictures of the other damaged trees. I didn't drop them off, and if I knew how to do, show my pretty face here, you would see them. Again, I'll come back to, and again, what you guys decide, but the reason why this all started is because he said that the soil and the height of the tree made them unsafe. He wasn't as concerned, or didn't say it, about, you know, rot or this or that, other than that dead one. It was really had to do.
And I think that to understand, you know, some of us like numbers, somebody might want to see what the pitch of that slope is, or take a picture of the side of the bank so you can see, obviously you're not going to capture the whole tree. So commissioners, we need to keep going. What would you like to do?
But if there's pictures of rot, if there's pictures of split, take
Yep.
pictures of that.
Each tree should probably have 2 or 3 or 4 pictures.
I'll make the same comments I've made in the past. I am not comfortable with a one-line statement from an arborist that says this tree poses a hazard, especially an arborist that works for a tree company who makes their money taking down trees. Furthermore, I think we open up a real can of worms by removing trees on steep banks with poor soils that don't grow vegetation. That's a recipe for short-term improvements and long-term disasters.
Okay, just to clarify that, these banks have beautiful vegetation. If you look, and you folks that have been out there, if you're looking at the lake to the left side, that's all PJMs, wildflowers. It's gorgeous. The ones under the pine, because they don't get sun, we haven't spent a lot of time planting flowers and everything, other than
Or shrubs.
but what we have done. No.
And let me interrupt you. I'm sorry. My concern is about the stabilization of the bank. I appreciate planting wildflowers. That's nice. That's great. That's lovely. That's a very different level of stabilization for whole bank structures than what a lattice of tree roots provides. And that's my fundamental concern here. And I think that's what the Wetland Protection Act is asking us to take a look at.
Yeah, and the tree roots are going to stay. You know, they're not touching the roots
until they break down.
Oh,
How about to move this forward? I think Sarah said it. Can you get 3 or 4 pictures of each one of the trees, number them, and then I think there's some that are going to be obvious, and there's maybe only 1 or 2, maybe 3 that are uncertain, and then we can move forward. Then.
Yeah, no, that sounds fine. I can do that. Drop them off. What I don't know, and Sarah, I think you mentioned it, a slight concern is when there's 7 there. There's 3 that I find that have structural problems. If you take those
and that can just be part of the narrative. So Amy, perhaps you can walk them through what has worked well in the past for what the commissioners need to see by each tree. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move this forward with your permission to November 14th, and Amy will give you a date, at a time for a hearing later.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, thank you. Have a good evening. Okay, so it is now 8:38. We're going to go ahead and open the 8:15 public meeting for request for determination of applicability 18 Middlesex, which is a replacement of a failed septic system. Who's here to speak to that?
Thanks.
Chris Stoddard Engineering on behalf of the applicant.
Okay, thank you, Chris. You can share screen.
Okay. Can everybody see that?
Not yet.
No, tell me. Oh, it would help if I hit the button. Let's try that out. Does that work?
Not yet.
No.
Oh, we're getting there. Oh, your screen share is loading. Let's give it a second.
Chris, your internet is kind of coming in and out, just so you know.
Of course it is. All right, hold on. Let's try it again. Share screen. Not working now?
Oh, you can see you.
Something, I guess.
Yeah. I would suggest if your internet is having issues, I would not do your own video.
Nice.
Okay, now your screen is loading. There you go.
All right. We good? Let me zoom in.
So, Chris, what you might want to do is to stop your video and keep your screen share on.
Okay, cool. How do I do that?
Lower left,
Stop video. There we go.
there you go.
Okay, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay. So what we have here is we have an existing house. It's number 18 Middlesex Drive. It has an existing failed septic system in the backyard right in this area. It's actually just a tank and a cesspool leach pit. What we have done is we came out here, we did some soil testing, and we're proposing an upgraded septic system for the in the same exact location. We did look in the front yard. We do not have the property line setbacks, and also we have the water line and the gas line issues. So we weren't able to relocate the system to the front yard. There is a intermittent stream in the back here. We are staying outside the 50-foot buffer of this intermittent stream. We're proposing silt fence and straw wattles to go around the entire project. This is all existing lawn. The existing fence line here, the lawn is all the way up to those limits. So we're proposing no tree cutting, no grading within the 50-foot buffer, just a straight Title V upgrade to a better system. So I guess I can answer any questions that you folks have.
Where's the existing system?
Do you see the hand moving? Literally, the existing tank is pretty much right in the same spot as the proposed tank,
Okay.
and the existing system is about right under the hand.
Mhm.
And it is 100% in the groundwater. So this is a massive improvement over what they have currently. Because groundwater is only at 22 inches, and that system's about 3 feet in the ground. So
So you're gonna be putting a raised mound or whatever?
correct. Yeah, we're doing a geomat. So we'll be the bottom of the geomat will be right about finished grade or existing grade, and then we're coming up about a foot total.
So you're starting at existing and coming up 1 foot?
Yeah, because the system itself is only about 6 inches. The system in total is only 2.5 inches tall. So 24 inches. So we're 2 feet out of the ground. We're 2 feet above high groundwater, which is at 22 inches down. So finished grade is going to be 281. An existing grade out there is 280. Yeah, the 280 contour line wraps around here. So the whole property is basically dead flat.
We're going to be looking at dewatering?
No. Because that's high groundwater. We didn't have, I mean, that's estimated high groundwater in the dead of spring. When we did our test pits, we had weeping, I think, at about 6 feet. So the intent would be not to install this in March.
Chris, did the Board of Health ask you to do buoyancy calculations on your tank?
Yes, and they are provided right there.
Oh, I was looking around. Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is anyone living there now?
Yes.
So what are they just pumping it now?
Yeah, as the tank fills it, yeah, they've pumped it 3 times in the last 2 months. So
Okay.
he's doing laundry and showering elsewhere and using it as minimally as he can.
Okay.
Chris, are you excavating the existing cesspool, or are you just building right on top?
No, we have to actually take it out. So we're going to pump it, remove the tank, and then bring in clean sand to fill the hole back in. We actually have to crane the tanks over the house because there's physically no room to get around it.
That was going to be the next question, access. Okay.
Yeah, we can fit through here with a mini excavator, but the actual tank has to, because of how heavy it has to be, we have to actually physically crane it over the house.
Oh,
Logistical nightmares, huh?
Yeah, well,
okay. And
unfortunately,
so do you have Board of Health approval currently?
no, they asked us to come to you folks first for
Okay.
approval from Concom. We are on their agenda, but
When is that?
whenever Jim Gareffi tells me, I don't know that answer off the top of my head. I have a conversation with Jim tomorrow about another project, so I can check with him, but
Is
you folks are the first.
anyone familiar with this site? I'm not familiar with 18.
I did run back and take a look at the delineation. It's a pretty straightforward ditch back there.
Okay. Where this is in failure, what are the thoughts, commissioners, for there's no alternative analysis needed?
I
Rather
don't
just
think
see
we, I don't think we have a lot of options.
Right.
Yeah, I'd be fine with it. I'm just wondering, it's filed as an RDA. Should this really have been an NOI with perhaps a waiver if there's site work within the 50?
Well, technically there is no site work within a 50.
Oh, there isn't. Okay.
No, we're completely outside your 50.
Yeah, Andrew, you're very close to see it. They're like within 1 foot.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. That's the wrong form. I was just pulling up your septic system policy. Yeah, no, we are literally just outside the 50.
Oh, excellent.
The grading is actually about 52, and we have the silt fencing pretty much right on 50, 51. So.
Oh, perfect.
The only thing that I would be comfortable going forward with this, I would want to make it clear that we expect any material stockpiles to be as far away from the resource area as possible, understanding that may still be in the 50 to 100 foot buffer zone.
So
They're going to have to go in and out with soil though, because there's no place to stockpile.
There will be no stockpiling on the site. We physically don't have room to put any materials.
Okay.
So 100%
even better from the resource area perspective.
Exactly. 100% of materials being loaded on a truck with a skid steer and going, and then coming back in and going right back into place.
Because that wasn't an NOI, Chris, can you put a note on that plan that states no stockpiling?
Yes. Yeah, I don't have an issue with that. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else that we want noted on this plan? I would be even as inclined for that erosion control to then also have some of the bright construction fencing or something to really keep them from going past that 50 if we're going to run this through.
That's fine. We can add orange snow fencing to the back side of it, or you know, right along within, right along it.
Yep.
Stop.
What's the pleasure of the commissioners?
I'm comfortable with a negative determination of whatever appropriate flavor here.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion?
Make a motion that we issue a -3 determination for 18 Middlesex Drive, DEP. Oh wait, no DEP file number. Sorry.
Right. Yep.
With the.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say with everything that we've noted so far in the meeting included on the plan.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Roll call vote. Chase.
Chase Gerwig, aye.
Kyle.
Maxwell, aye.
Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Ed.
Outside.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Carl.
Carl Melberg, aye.
Myself, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay, so Chris, if you can just be circle back with Amy with some notice as soon as you've got erosion control and snow fencing up.
Will do. Thank you so
Board of
much.
Health approval.
And Board of
Yes.
Health, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
We're not
Good
starting
call.
without their approval first, so.
Yeah.
Just don't want to make
Okay.
enemies.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful night.
Good to see you.
Okay,
Chris.
thank you.
Yeah, you too. Bye now.
So it's 8:50. We're going to open the 8:30 notice of intent, Hartwell Avenue, Lot 1, grading and installation of stormwater management system. I don't see a DEP number, but there could be one.
There is not yet. And I think you might as well go ahead and open lot 2 at the same time, because there might be some crisscross discussion between lot 1 and 2.
Okay, who is here to address this for Hartwell 1 and 2?
I am Sarah Dan Wolf from David Ross Associates.
Okay, hi Dan.
Hello.
All righty, walk us through.
Sure. A quick background summary. This is a 10.03 acre parcel of land on Hartwell Ave. The majority of the site was mapped within the natural heritage zone. So we have spent, I believe it's the last 18 months working with Goddard Consulting and the Natural Heritage, going through different iterations of their concerns and their criteria. The project started out with 7 lots. And we are here presenting tonight the overall plan that shows 6 lots. We purposefully kept as much activity out of the buffer zone as possible. And as your agenda shows, there are 2 lots on the south side or the left side of the page as you're looking at it, lots 1 and lots 2. And the only thing that we are proposing in that effort is to open up an area. It's basically going to be used as yard space and some grading. Lot 1 specifically, we have about 900 square feet of land area right where the cursor is circling that would be cleared, graded, and then loamed and seeded and stabilized in that manner. Since both hearings are open, I'll just also say that Lot 2 has a similar area behind the house, which encompasses about 1,450 square feet. And again, that area is simply cleared of some trees, filled and graded to supplement the overall lot there. We also, by virtue of creating 4 or more lots, are subject to the Massachusetts stormwater management standards. So there was an extensive evaluation done, drainage calculations, a stormwater report, and this stormwater management and erosion control plan was put together as a result of those studies. In this particular case, lots 1 and 2 both have Cultec recharge chambers that are proposed, and they both fall right on the 100-foot buffer zone line. Those are picking up rooftop drainage and depositing those into the chambers themselves. The soil here is excellent and conducive to infiltrating water back into the ground without necessarily migrating and running off of the site. And I think I've covered most everything. Oh, I also wanted to just say that as a result of the natural heritage, the MESA process, there's a total disturbance of 3.48 acres of the 10-acre site. So it's about 1/3 of the site has disturbances, whereas 2/3 of the site is protected under a restriction. That restriction area is shown by the dark, bold, dotted line that encompasses the backside of all of these lots. And thank you, Amy, I believe. The cursor is running right along that whole restriction area. Natural Heritage also asked that that whole restriction line at any angle point will be marked, so it will be visible by any of these future homeowners. And then lastly, there's also a parcel in the back that's going to be deeded to the town of Littleton. That's parcel A in the back, 2.11 acres. I believe that will end up in the hands of the cemetery department. I can answer any questions. I'd be happy to.
Dan, while we're on that parcel A to cemetery, what's the use going to be of that land? Are they going to be able to have trails through there, or is it just going to be naturalized? What's the intent of that donation?
I have to admit, I don't know if there's going to be trails on it, but certainly if there's anything that's happening out there within the yellow buffer zone line, they would obviously have to come to you. But it just seemed to make sense that the land be deeded and adjoined with the existing land of the cemetery department.
Getting back to your bounds, what are you going to use for bounds for markers?
I had asked that question of Natural Heritage, and they wanted those angle points to be marked with large boulders placed by a machine as opposed to something that is maneuverable by hand. In other words, we don't want those to move. So those will be large boulders at each angle point.
And will those will be noted on the as-bills?
Yes, they certainly can be, and Natural Heritage has also asked us to certify as soon as the marking has been done, we are to certify by a registered land surveyor that permanent monuments have been installed in accordance with the site plan.
Amy, would you hold the building permit to that until those are done? Ask them to hold it? Or how does that work? How do
Yeah, I think, occupancy permit probably.
For sure. Yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry. I think that's been done before. Something to just,
Yeah.
sure, that's kind of like the last hurdle.
So no signage, just boulders.
That's correct.
So, but parcel A doesn't have to have signage. I guess I'm just concerned for future use on A.
There was nothing stipulated by Natural Heritage, no.
But am I correct, commissioners, that if you're going to put a path through, you would have to go back to them?
Back to Natural Heritage?
Right.
I would assume so, yes. Any activities within that zone, certainly.
And it's really steep in there.
I guess I would look for some signage or something, so there's some generational knowledge. And I'm assuming that's going to be in the deed anyways, but.
Yeah, but Sarah, if parcel A is going to be transferred to the town.
To the cemetery committee.
Yeah, that's why I stopped halfway through the sentence. If it was coming to us, I guess I wouldn't worry about it. We'd be paying attention to that anyway.
Right, but where it's not coming to us.
And if I recall, I believe this is where the cemetery had just done some new grading for the plots up there. So I'm not sure how much in the future they may or may not need to, do more work in here. As you can tell, it's really steep in there.
Yeah, I was going to say
have a hard
that.
time getting a trail in there.
Yes, I was going to say that, Amy. The backside is very steep.
But you can see there is sort of a trail through here. But the main trails are up in here somewhere.
Where on Hartwell is this?
This is the existing house here is street number 46. It was known as I believe it was called Hartwell Hills. It's an old ski area, believe it or not, that had slopes coming down on the westerly off-site property line. So through the cemetery area, and the house that exists there was actually the old ski lodge.
Right. Okay, I know where it is. Yep. Okay. Commissioners, questions?
Yeah, one other question, Dan. Did Natural Heritage require anything with respect to fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, etc.?
They did not stipulate that I recall. I had read over the approval letter earlier today, and I don't recall that being in there. No.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing it either.
I didn't see that. I read that today and I didn't see that.
I mean, to be perfectly frank, our jurisdictional purview here is fairly limited, but to the extent that we can, I wouldn't mind to limit the use of, require the use of like sort of our standard conditions with respect to herbicides and pesticides and fertilizers, slow release fertilizers, etc.
So Dan, we do not have the DEP number yet?
I looked as late as this afternoon at about 4:00, and I did not see a number posted yet. No.
Okay. Our next meeting is on the 14th.
I will just one other thing, Dana, and I'm not sure because the Natural Heritage permit relies also on the invasive species management over by Lot 5. But Lot 5 is not part of this.
I was just gonna ask about lot 5 because
Yeah, so it's, I'm not sure. We do have a Natural Heritage permit that I can attach to an order of conditions for lots 1 and 2, but it relies on Lot 5, which we haven't seen yet.
okay, so
Well, the work to be done on lot 5 is for the mitigation of the invasives over there. And obviously that does require the need of a more professional to come in and advise as to how that, I believe it's Japanese knotweed, how that is going to be remediated, what method and so forth. And I did not have those details at this time to put a notice of intent together. And that actually raises the question, does something along those lines of invasive removal and doing some not invasive, what's the word I'm looking for? Just natural plantings. Does that rise to the level of a notice of intent, or would the commission be happy with an RDA on that side of the property?
The only work within a jurisdictional area is invasive management there, Dan? Because it looks like your house is.
it looks like the house is
Darn close.
The house is very close. So if we're talking about, the actual construction, we are on certainly outside of 90 feet from the wetlands. And as you've stated in the past, there is no activities proposed within 50 feet other than some of the invasive removal.
No grading. I know we're not really talking about lot 5 now, except as it rolls back to lots 1 and 2, but there's no grading on lot 5 to allow you to build that house.
No, and I'll remind you that dark dash bold line there is the restriction area. So nothing can go beyond that line anyway. The invasives, by the way, are on that southerly slope leading right where the designation lot 5 is. You can see that steep slope. That steep slope running up and down the page is just filled with Japanese knotweed. Yes, thank you, Amy.
And where would the access be to work to remove that? How do you get in there?
I would, the easiest way that we currently would get to that location is to go to the house on lot 6. Again, the new house kind of overlays in an odd shape the old house, and then walking from that location where the cursor is down the page along that steep slope. There are also old little cart paths that are shown there on that plan that lead you right over to that. That whole area of lot 5, by the way, where the house is going to go, is the old parking area for the ski area. Okay. So that has grown up with some scrub growth there, but basically it's a completely flat area, and you could actually walk right up to the invasives along that slope from anywhere within the building area of lot 5.
So rolling this back to lot 1 and 2, how are we going to ultimately move forward on 1 and 2 while we're still looking at invasives? Can we portion this off to allow 1 and 2 to go forward?
Is that a question for the commission or myself?
Everyone.
I had imagined that this would be segmented. In other words, lots 1 and 2, and the work on those 2 lots is really independent from the rest. It's all tied together under the natural heritage approval. And we certainly have full intentions of coming to you for the lot 5 work. And as I asked earlier, is that notice of intent or RDA type of material?
And I think I'd kind of like to talk to Natural Heritage about that. If they care or don't care, if we kind of move ahead with 1 and 2, but 5 lags behind, because that's some of the mitigation for the natural heritage permit.
Sure, and that's fine, Amy. I can give you the contact information for the person we dealt with. Actually, there's been a couple of people we've dealt with, but most recently, I'll get you her contact information.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and I think we have time. I think the commissioner, we just want to make sure, because in other projects, we've had great intentions and then it was sold off and then we're just chasing. Todd, I know you're not going to do that, but that we just have to protect ourselves, that if some of it gets, if there's another developer, another builder that comes in and doesn't follow through with what was supposed to be done.
Yeah. All I can say for the testimony is that is not the case. Todd and his family are planning on moving through this project on their own.
In the interest of expediting the next time we pick this up, can we narrow down specifically on what it is we want to pick up in them, whatever it is, 3 or 4 weeks when we have our next meeting? In other words, do we as a commission have a problem with the work on lots 1 and 2 independent of the natural heritage stuff, right? Or are we good with that as it's laid out and we just need to resolve the relationship with natural heritage?
I personally am good with 1 and 2. Commissioners, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm good with 1 and 2 also.
Would you want any kind of signage
Yeah,
along here? Because this pond's me awfully attractive.
yeah, that's what I was gonna. That was really the only comment I have. Is I appreciate that Natural Heritage is asking for monuments at the corners or at whatever angles that they said, but there's a lot of space in between those angle points in some of these lots.
I'm really happy to
Amy,
add.
what about the signs like we did over at Durkee or I think Glen Burgers or something that I think we were really robust in some of the different places, how often there were signs.
Yeah, they say, can you hear me? Protected land, no disturbance or alteration, including mowing, dumping beyond this line.
Yep.
I'm really happy to ask the applicant, but I think we have to understand here that our jurisdiction is fairly limited. Maybe we could require that for lots 1 and 2.
Oh yeah,
or portions
exactly.
thereof.
I completely agree that it's probably only going to happen in lots 1 and 2, and maybe we ask if you could put that in the rest of them as well. But yeah, that's
Because there's already trails through there. So
Well, Dan, you'll have to ask Todd.
Is the natural heritage, is it supposed to prevent people from going beyond that artificial boundary?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so getting back to Chase's original question, so when we meet on the 14th, provided there's a DEP number, and we've had Amy's had correspondence with Natural Heritage, that we can go forward on 1 and 2 and hopefully have more answers with Dan's support for 5 in the invasives.
I just want to jump in and say that deed restriction line is not preventing people from going by there. That people are allowed to go beyond that. It's just you can't build anything or do anything back there.
yes.
Okay. Someone said preventing people, so I just wanted to make sure.
No, the question is, and I appreciate that. Thank you for joining us. It's that National Heritage does have sites that they can really not want anyone, no foot traffic or anything. So they predetermine what that access can be.
Correct.
Any other commissioners have any questions?
Is there any particular language yet on what the deed restriction will say, or is it just going to be showing a map? What's the deed restriction going to say about that line?
Todd and Ashley, had the actual wording been completed on the restriction itself?
No, not yet. Just the plan is complete.
But from what Natural Heritage said, it's just no building or anything beyond that point.
No sheds, no lawn, nothing.
Yeah, that would be interesting. No building versus no mowing or no management. I'd be
That's
interested
also
to hear
no
what that language
storage.
is.
So like no outside storage, like somebody can't just go ahead and start to store things there as well.
That is correct, yes.
keeping
When
in
will
mind that someone has
When will
to,
that language be done, do you think, Todd and Ashley?
We could check on it tomorrow.
Okay.
I believe a draft has been formulated, but I haven't seen a final product.
And it's already.
Before you move to the final product, can you share with Amy, and she can share with some of the commissioners just to look at that language?
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
The deed restriction plan has already been recorded with the state.
Okay, yeah, but the language in.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Right, so.
Our action items for a month from now, whatever November 14th are, we'll have the language for the deed restriction. We'll sort out the relationship between lots 1 and 2 and the mitigation on lot 5. And Todd and Ashley, if you would consider what your willingness to put markers, frankly, on all of the lots, I think is the ask, with signage rather than just boulders.
Okay.
And he could alternate them.
What's that?
Boulders.
But what, didn't Heritage say that the boulders are required and then you can do more than that, but isn't that the minimum
The
step?
boulders are required.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess just circling back, we're just looking for some signage. So, okay, if you could let us know the week before Amy sends us everything for the meeting, so that way we've already had a chance to kind of look at this. We would have already looked at the final language for the deed restriction. That just makes the next meeting go smoother.
Okay.
Okay.
Super.
And I believe it was Chase that mentioned the mitigation on lot 5, which makes me, I'm sorry, have to ask the same question again. Would the commission be pleased with a notice of intent, or can we do a RDA for the mitigation work?
Historically, I think, Dan, it depends on the scope of how much we're treating, access, if it's going to be complicated or if it's going to be an easy, more like slam dunk. So
yeah, that's kind of where I'm in. If it's like hand pulling, I'd be perfectly fine with an RDA. If we needed to do Japanese knotweed is a real pain in the butt. So if there needed to be something like mechanical removals, I would look at that very differently than hand removals.
Yep.
Great. Thank you for that input. Appreciate it.
Sorry
Right,
to
so
not be able to
it's
give you
just
more
mowing.
clarity there.
It's mowing it 2 or 3 times and then treating it with chemicals. Not actually digging it up.
Okay, so we'll look
You're
for
not
all
going to
that.
win that. There's just going to be Japanese knotweed there in 2 years.
That's what they're doing on other areas, so.
So they probably on other areas, and I could be wrong, they probably have an order of conditions and they're having to monitor it 3 years, 5 years, so
Right.
that they're going to have to stay with that. With that said, I think I'd probably go for an order of conditions. I mean, notice of intent, but Dan, you can come back to us with that. All right, so we're going to keep moving along. We'll see you on the 14th and hopefully have information prior to that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep, good evening. Okay, it's 9:13. We're going to go ahead and open the 9 o'clock notice of intent 18 Porter, which we do not have the DEP number, which is a replacement of an existing deck.
Here he comes.
And that's Michael that's joining us. Yep. Okay, good evening. You're on mute, just so that you know. And welcome, and if you can, for the commissioners, just go ahead and reintroduce yourself. That would be great.
Michael Zamula. So I was hoping that I actually didn't look until just now during the meeting for the DEP number, but I was hoping to have that. But Michael Zamula, we're doing a deck replacement project at 18 Porter, and any questions? I think we discussed most of it last week. or the
Okay,
week before.
do you have a plan or photo or anything that you'd like to share for the commissioners as a reminder, or anything that you'd like to share? Amy, I don't know if you have anything, or Michael, if you do.
We sent in photos that were additional Sunday afternoon, I believe, or yesterday morning, I forget when. But no, I mean, nothing additional.
Okay, so just for my kind of edification here, my knowledge is that there was a deck, and deck was replaced and it was enlarged, and we are in the 0 to 50. So based on what I've learned, I'd like to know how close we are to the edge and how the deck was built. Is it on?
So it was a cantilever deck originally, and it was 5 feet from the side of the house. The new deck is 10 feet from the side of the house and has 4 6x6 posts that are about just over 16 foot from the bottom of the deck to the ground. And we were told not to do a delineation for the waiver, since the deck was already constructed after what I believe was a miscommunication between us and the building inspector. And so the deck is constructed, and based on the mass mapper data for the wetland mass mapper, we're approximately, this I gotta look at, I believe it was 38 feet away from what was standing water, or no, sorry, 38 feet away from what would have been the boundary of the wetland on mass mapper. However, we were actually from the nearest post only about 28 feet from standing water at the time, because it was after heavy rain.
Okay. Michael, when was this? I'm just trying to line up the dots. When did you build this, and who was the code enforcer at the time?
Great question. When? Let me see. I believe we shared the same name. Mike, I don't remember his last name, was the building inspector.
Oh, it was Mike Kenny.
Mike Kenny. And this wasn't terribly long ago. It was early summer, I believe. I'm sorry, I have to go through my photos.
Okay, so that's fine. I'm just trying to figure out how there could have been miscommunications from something that was cantilevered to then have 6x6 posts.
No, sorry. I think the miscommunication was just no one, myself, our CSL, the GC who did the work, and the building inspector. When you walk around the back of the property, you've got a ton of shrubs and trees, and no one could see that there was a wetland right behind there, quite frankly. And so what had happened was we got approval, and we passed our excavation permit, a part of the permit application, and within 4 or 5 days after that, the deck was complete. A couple days after that, we requested a final inspection, and then I apologize.
On your application for your building permit, is there not a box that asks if you're near wetlands? Amy, I haven't seen that.
No, usually every building permit that comes in gets circulated to everybody.
Right, but doesn't the applicant have to make some judgment that there's wetlands or not wetlands on their property?
No, they don't.
Okay.
But I frankly forget the chain of events here too, how the deck got built without that permit being circulated to everybody.
So when we went to request the final, I believe it must have been an aerial that Mike looked at, but when he came to do the final inspection, that's when he said, "Oh, sorry, I missed this, but it looks like you may be within the 50-foot buffer." And then we met with Amy at the site. We went through and submitted the waiver application. And in this case, we're trying to mitigate any disturbance that's already been done by adding wetland plants, planting wetland plants to basically mitigate any erosion or any other disturbance that's already been caused.
What is underneath the deck?
There was nothing. So underneath the deck, it was, we didn't change the grade. Nothing was done to change any grade, but it was, I'd say, gravel. I think.
So do you have gravel there now, or there's pavers there now? What's there now?
It's still the same that it was. There's it was gravel that looked like it had just been worn out and kicked away for years. It was gravel and dirt, and then just another 5 feet past the post, there is a lawn. Again, and not in the greatest condition, but there was lawn there, and then about 10 to 15 feet of lawn, and then all the plants and shrubs there that were in front of the wetland.
And you don't have any photographs to share with the commission for that?
I don't have them on my computer. No. Let's see if I can. Well, I sent them in an email.
Okay. Commissioners, questions, comments?
The deck is bigger than the previous deck. It sounds like twice as large.
Exactly. Yeah, it was five.
So
five
that
foot
extra
panel.
space, did you put more gravel underneath it, or did you just leave it whatever it was?
So the deck isn't, I don't even believe there are hangers. All of the hangers are completed because we ran into the issue with the waiver, submitting the waiver. So there's no one on the deck. We haven't finished the project. It's been in limbo until we finish this.
So do you access the deck from the house through like a slider, or
Through the rear? Yeah, it's on the second level through a slider.
okay? And are there proposed stairs to go down to the ground?
No, there are no stairs to go down to the ground.
Okay.
The deck is very high.
It is. It is very high. I do.
And there's no proposal to cover the deck?
Cover the deck?
No roof to cover the deck.
No.
It's just always going to be open.
No. And I found photos. If I put them in a Dropbox and shared them yesterday, I found them. If you'd like me to share them, I can do that.
Yeah, actually, I thought Tim was going to load those, but I just looked at the email, and it's not a live link to the Dropbox.
It's telling me that you cannot start screen share while other participant is sharing.
I can do that.
Oh, sorry, Amy.
So commissioners, while we're waiting for Michael to load some photos, discussion on this, thoughts on this, direction?
Well, I guess my 2 cents is we've had decks like this come up in the past within the 50, and we've not let them go. So again, for consistency's sake, I would have a problem with the expanded deck.
That other picture I saw suggests that even the house is inside the 50.
It is, yes. So, and this is actually a view of when you walk around the deck, you can see how much foliage at the time, especially during late spring, early summer. And it was simply not noticed that there was water past those shrubs and those trees. Let me pull up. This is underneath the deck here. So the stone, the large stone you're seeing, it was actually in place there. None of it was moved except for, I think, 2 or 3 blocks on either of the exterior posts, because we had to dig. That's the area that we did disturb. I should have a better picture straight on so you can see what was beneath that.
So getting back to Ed's question, Michael, what was the premise of pulling a building permit anyways? Was it just for the deck, or did you have other work being done to the house?
It was a deck and a staircase in the front of the house on the far side. What had happened was the homeowner wanted to, the homeowner hired a structural engineer to come out and determine whether or not the pre-existing cantilever deck would be strong enough to support a hot tub on top of it. That obviously was turned down. And the problem with the cantilever deck is that the 2 center beams that were coming out of the house were rotting. And so there was a proposal from the engineer to sister additional, I believe 2x12s or to either side to just reinforce those 2 rotting beams. And then obviously that was a lot of work in and of itself. We then discussed replacing the beams entirely from the center of the house to the exterior, which would have caused another close to $200,000 worth of interior work because of some bathrooms and other things we would have disturbed. And we then just proposed this deck by bringing posts to the ground, because the long-term scare for everyone was that the 2 interior cantilever beams were rotting, and at some point it would have happened to the exterior beams. And in that case, the deck would just have to come down. But as you can see here, it was lawn up to a gravelly dirt area just between this bank here on the left and the same bank here on the right, on either side of the back of the house.
Carl, you mentioned previous projects. I think you said we didn't let it go. What does that mean?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
We've had previous projects. I know one in particular, we had a cantilever deck proposal. That was within the 50 that we denied.
Oh, okay.
And we've recently had we've had quite a few expansions to homes within the 50 that we haven't allowed. I remember there was a kitchen expansion that we did not approve. And I think it's kind of been we've held pretty steadfast to the 50.
I am a little surprised that, I mean, that water is pretty visible.
Yeah, so this was I believe there was a ton of rain that actually delayed the project. So this water was very high at the time of construction, and again, I mean, it went unnoticed and by multiple parties.
Yeah, Michael, can you remind us, what is your role in this?
So I'm just the point of contact for the client. I'm working with a CSL that I've been working with for years out of Worcester.
Okay.
Jason, he's the one who did all the work. And yeah.
And who was the person that pulled the permit?
Myself and Jason.
Okay. All right, commissioners, what would we like to do?
Options are there?
Strictly speaking, actually, there's no options today because we don't have a number.
Regardless of that, though, I mean, what would we be able to propose? The deck is built.
That doesn't matter.
Unfortunately, decks can be unbuilt too.
Right.
I'm sorry, say it again.
So unfortunately, they can be unbuilt as well.
Okay,
Well, look at even just, was it Ipswich or whatever? We had them rip up that whole lawn and everything was established. That was built in error.
So obviously, we're not
4-5
looking
Cleva.
So obviously, we're not looking to rip out a deck that we just built since we've got a ton of money into it. And that's why we proposed a mitigation plan. So last time we had this meeting, I don't think anyone had reviewed our application. So hopefully you have at this point.
How many commissioners have gone out to the site?
We didn't schedule a sidewalk 2 weeks ago.
Okay. So I think because of the complexity and consistency, I think I can think of other ones that we've all had to meet out on site. I would encourage a site walk. I know if anyone can go earlier, I can go on I know we're meeting on November 2nd at 5 o'clock. I don't know if there's any commissioners that want to do this ahead of time or schedule something different.
Personally, November 2nd would be great since I'm in New Mexico until probably a week and a half from now.
I could join you, Sarah.
Okay. So I would say like 4:30 should be fine, and then we just go over to, I think that would be fine because we're going to be over on Porter anyways.
Like you mentioned the mitigation plan. Is that part of your application? I see that you referenced it, but was it in there as well?
It is. It's in our project narrative.
It's the narrative.
Discuss planting.
So there wasn't, okay. There's not a plan per se of where those would go. It's just in there.
No. And in all honesty, some of the conversations we've had internally would be to potentially, for whatever reason, a wetland delineation wasn't requested for this. From what I understand, they're typically required. And it may be a good thing to do because, and who knows, maybe we're outside of the 50-foot buffer. I don't know.
I mean, you're certainly welcome to do that, Michael. We discussed whether or not you needed to, and 2 weeks ago, and the decision was we can go forward with it within the 50, as we currently understand it. That's the most conservative approach for us.
Understood.
If you want to have it delineated, you should have plenty of time between now and November 2nd to do so. And then we can look at the delineation simultaneously with the sidewalk.
Okay.
One thing, and there's nothing to preclude you, Michael, to go ahead and actually, just get some extra stakes and walk us through. If you do have thoughts of your kind of like replication or wherever you want to put plantings, to go ahead and be like,
and actually identify where they'll go. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I guess that was my question.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
and
we'll
to
base
talk
that
about diameter of trees and what that might look like, and renaturalizing, so pulling the yard back. So there's going to have to be, I would say, significant balance here. So it's not just going to be like putting in 5 different shrubs. So you're going to have to really meet a very high criteria. I know you have a lot invested already, but this would be
absolutely
yeoman's effort.
My background is in environmental science, so I'm with you 100%.
So I guess I'm surprised.
Just to be clear, though, Sarah, that the replication plan is currently 5 shrubs.
I wasn't gonna.
Okay.
That's why I mentioned that.
Right, and so that was based off of what was disturbed, and if what was disturbed, so we matched what was disturbed and some, but if that's not sufficient, then you tell me now. I mean, we can go above and beyond.
You're going to have to go above and beyond. However, I've not seen the site, so I would not be one to comment this evening.
Okay.
Others may have seen it or may have other input.
In the interim, Amy, could I ask you to also look into why this wasn't flagged originally? And the challenge here is that it's not on the town to identify whether or not an applicant needs to comply with the Wetlands Protection Act. The act is very clear that it's the onus is on them. Nonetheless, it could factor into at least my thinking to understand sort of the trajectory of how this may have slipped through the cracks. Because I don't think any of us likes the idea of taking out a deck and replacing it with what was there. But it,
And we're not in the business of building what's not lawful by any means. So this is not something that was done intentionally. And it seems absurd looking at this photo, but it's absolutely not something that was done intentionally.
our challenge here, Michael, is that we do not want to create a perverse incentive for people to build without complying and ask forgiveness rather than permission. And that's
Absolutely.
Sort of the core of our struggle right now.
No, I understand. And I would absolutely. I was very taken aback when a week after getting excavation approval with the screenshot taken online, just in case it was taken back at a later date. I was taken aback that this had come up. So that's all I'll say.
Okay, so going forward, we will see someone on November 2nd, and then this is being pushed to November 14th. And Amy will give you a time for the meeting at a later date.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Take care. Commissioners, anything else? Town meeting next up. And then after that, the next day, we will do some visits, sidewalks. Anybody have anything else?
Yeah, I did want to mention that the Conservation Trust is holding their annual meeting. Let me get my calendar.
The 24th, I think, something like that.
Yes, 25th, Wednesday the 25th at Dirigible, at 6:30 p.m. Including a talk.
If you can't make that on November 2nd, I'm buying all the land trail crew people a beer at Dirigible on the 2nd. So meeting better not go another night.
Okay. Okay, it's 9:38. If someone would like to make a motion to close October 17th, 2023.
Move to close the October 17th.
Second.
Okay, thank you.
All right, roll call vote. Chase.
Chase Gerbeck guy.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Ed.
Ed Falls eye.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Carl.
Carl Melberg guy.
Myself, aye. It's unanimous.
All right, everyone have a good week.